In a distant memory, Naoto recalls meeting a blonde girl during his childhood, a hazy image that lingers in the back of his mind. Now, in the present, Naoto refuses to join any school clubs, insisting that he needs to go home right after class to take care of his little sister. As soon as he leaves the room, his classmates begin whispering behind his back, calling him a siskin for being overly protective of his fourth-grade sister. Unbeknownst to them, Naoto hears every word. Before he can reach the school gate, his friend Shigenobu stops him for a quick chat. He suggests that Naoto at least try joining a small social group instead of a club. But Naoto declines again, explaining that he has to take care of things at home, and even mentions that he's considering getting a part-time job. Just then, Yukari appears in front of them, her smile lighting up the hallway. She invites Naoto to join the committee meeting, though he tries unsuccessfully to hide his obvious crush on her. Despite his nervousness, he still turns down her invitation. Instead of looking disappointed, Yukari simply wishes him luck with his sister, playfully calling him Big Brother before walking away. Back home, Naoto prepares dinner for himself and Suzu. The own rice he serves looks messy, but Suzu devours it with unrestrained delight. After dinner, just as Naoto starts cleaning up, their Aunt Tamiyo arrives, looking as irritated as ever. She hands them their monthly allowance, and to Naoto's surprise, it's more generous than usual. Tamiyo explains that she's giving extra since it was Suzu's birthday last week. Then, with a strange look in her eyes, she mutters that it almost feels like she's handing money to her older brother. The comment sends a chill down Naoto's spine, and he can't help but wonder what exactly happened between Tamiyo and her late father. That night, the house grows quiet as everyone settles into sleep. The next morning, Suzu asks Naoto to help her with her hair. He agrees, but wonders aloud how long she plans to rely on him for everything. Suzu giggles, saying he has to take care of her until she's old, but her tone turns serious as she adds that it has to be that way, since it's just the two of them now. Her words make Naoto reflect on their situation. Their parents have both passed away, and for years they were shuffled from one relative to another. It's only been a month since they started living under Tamiyo's roof. Suzu reminds him of the time, and they head out together. On their way to school, she notices a small plant growing by the sidewalk, the same kind their mother used to grow. Moved by her smile, Naoto promises to buy her something after school to make up for not giving her a birthday gift. But as they walk, a mysterious blonde girl trails behind them. Though Naoto doesn't turn around, he feels her presence and quietly warns Suzu to go straight home after school. At school, Naoto feels a brief rush of happiness when he runs into Yukari again. His excitement, however, is quickly deflated when Shigenobu teases him, saying Yukari is out of his league. He adds that she recently turned down a modeling offer, a testament to how perfect she seems. Then Shigenobu mentions that a new transfer student has arrived, someone unbelievably beautiful named Satsuki. The moment her name is spoken, Naoto's expression hardens. After school, the blonde girl, Satsuki, approaches Naoto and calls his name with eerie familiarity. He tries to ignore her, but she keeps following him even after he leaves the school grounds. Finally, he stops and turns around, asking what she wants, coldly calling her a garden crusher. Satsuki doesn't take offense. Instead, she smiles, pleased that he remembers her at all. She reintroduces herself and says it's been 6 years since they last met, and admits that she's been following him since her transfer. Naoto's patience wears thin. He reminds her how she destroyed his family's garden years ago, but she dodges the subject, apologizing only for stalking him. She says she wants to talk, but Naoto has no interest in hearing her out. Suddenly, Satsuki wraps her arms around him from behind, pinning him in place. But the moment she lets go, he bolts, forcing her to chase after him. Meanwhile, Suzu walks home thinking about what kind of birthday gift she'd like. She passes by a family working in a nearby field and feels a pang of nostalgia for when their parents were still alive and their family was whole. Just then, Naoto comes running up and grabs her by the arm, warning her not to make eye contact with Satsuki. When they finally reach home, Naoto catches his breath while Suzu, confused, asks who that strange girl was. Naoto doesn't answer. Instead, Suzu says she's decided what she wants for her birthday, to grow a garden with him. Naoto gently tells her it's impossible since they don't have land, but Suzu refuses to give up on the idea. At that moment, Tamiyo peeks out of her room and offers to let them use her yard. However, she warns that it's filthy and overrun with weeds. Naoto tries to refuse, but Tamiyo ends the discussion by slamming her door shut. They go outside to inspect the yard, and sure enough, it's exactly as she described. Still, they decide to make the best of it. Suddenly, Satsuki appears, holding a hoe. Naoto screams in shock, a sound loud enough for Yukari, who happens to be nearby, to hear. Naoto instinctively shields Suzu as Satsuki approaches, insisting she only wants to talk. But Naoto's anger boils over, he accuses her of ruining his life. Satsuki freezes, clearly hurt, before suddenly stepping forward and pressing her lips against his in a full-on kiss. Both of them tumble to the ground right as Yukari, Suzu, and even Tamiyo witness the scene. Just when it seems like she'll pull away, Satsuki deepens the kiss. Naoto's head spins, his vision blurs. By the time she lets go, he's already unconscious beneath her. In his sleep, Naoto hears Satsuki's voice echoing in his mind, calling his name again and again. When he finally wakes, he's back in his room, struggling to process what happened. From the hallway, Tamayo calls out, flatly warning him that if he plans to make out in the yard again, she'll throw him out. Later that morning, Naoto walks Suzu to school, trying to explain that he and Satsuki aren't even friends. But Suzu, hurt and confused, refuses to believe him. She declares she'll work on the garden alone and runs off ahead. Despite everything, she still doesn't recognize Satsuki from 6 years ago. At school, Yukari can't stop thinking about what she saw. She tries to shake off the image of Naoto and Satsuki kissing, but can't help wondering if they're actually a couple. Naoto approaches her by the lockers, apologizing for missing the previous committee meeting and saying he'll have to skip today's as well. Yukari smiles kindly, saying she admires how devoted he is to his sister. Most high schoolers, she notes, start drifting away from their families by his age. The moment is cut short when Satsuki appears out of nowhere. She walks right up to Yukari, eyes her chest, and bluntly remarks that she knows Naoto likes girls with bigger busts. Naoto nearly faints from embarrassment. Yukari stands frozen in disbelief as he hurriedly drags Satsuki away, muttering apologies. He corners her on the rooftop, demanding to know why she said that. Satsuki tilts her head, genuinely confused which part upset him. Then she pulls a familiar hoe from behind her and hands it to him, saying she forgot to return it 6 years ago. The moment he touches it, memories flood back of their time in Shinshu when they were neighbors. Back then, Satsuki would wander into his family's garden uninvited. Despite her odd behavior, they became friends, spending their days together tending plants, sharing snacks, and telling stories. But one day, without warning, she destroyed the garden they had built together and disappeared. Now, standing before her again, Naoto finally asks why she did it. Satsuki avoids the question, apologizing instead of the teasing grin, saying she can offer her body as compensation. Flustered, Naoto scolds her, especially for kissing him in front of Suzu. To his surprise, Satsuki's playful expression fades. She looks quietly disappointed, then walks away, leaving Naoto stunned and unsure why he suddenly feels like the one at fault. Back inside, he runs into Shigenobu and Yukari. Yukari avoids his eyes, and Naoto's stomach sinks. He's certain she now hates him because of Satsuki. After school, Naoto walks home, brooding over how his peaceful high school life has fallen apart. But his thoughts are cut short when he sees Suzu and Satsuki's arms, a scrape visible on her leg. Panicking, Naoto demands that Satsuki let Suzu go. She refuses, joking that she might just take Suzu away. Naoto raises the hoe in warning, ready to fight if he must. Satsuki simply smirks, saying he's not the type to hurt women or children. Naoto counters that if it's for Suzu, he'll do anything. His dramatic words leave both girls blushing in embarrassment. Suzu quickly explains that Satsuki helped her after she fell, and that she even promised to help with the garden. Relieved, Naoto lowers the hoe and agrees to let her stay. As they walk home, Satsuki casually mentions that the garden he thought was his actually used to belong to her. When they arrive, they find Yukari waiting out front, blushing slightly as she says she wanted to talk. The next day, Naoto helps Yukari shop for committee supplies since no one else could make it. Meanwhile, Suzu and Satsuki stay behind to work on the garden. Suzu sulks over Naoto choosing Yukari's company, so Satsuki invites her to go shopping too, hoping to cheer her up. At the store, Yukari takes the chance to ask Naoto about Satsuki. He quickly denies any romantic involvement, explaining she's just someone from his past. He nearly confesses his feelings for Yukari, but holds back. When they step outside, they run into Suzu and Satsuki. Suzu rushes over, clearly pouting that Naoto was with Yukari, but her mood softens when he hands her a small blue hoe of her own. She beams with happiness. Watching the siblings together, Satsuki quietly slips away. Yukari waves goodbye, giving Naoto a dazzling smile, then accidentally blurts out that she loves how dedicated he is. Flustered, she corrects herself and hurries off. Naoto and Suzu return home, only to find Satsuki waiting in the yard, smiling the same gentle smile she once had years ago. She teasingly calls his outing with Yukari a date and jokes that she wants one too. Naoto is taken aback, not only by her teasing but by the sight of the yard now spotless. Satsuki had cleaned everything herself. Then, without warning, she begins changing clothes right there in the open. Naoto panics and rushes to stop her, and the two tumble to the ground, just as Tamayo walks in. Her face darkens instantly. Clearly at her limit, she glares at Naoto, ready to unleash her fury. After Tamayo storms off, Naoto and Satsuki quietly get up, instinctively putting some distance between each other. The tension from earlier lingers in the air, leaving Naoto uneasy. To clear his mind, he invites Suzu out for a walk, telling Satsuki to just head home. However, instead of leaving, Satsuki ends up following right behind them, claiming her house happens to be in the same direction. As they walk, she casually asks if they're planning to move out. Her question catches Naoto off guard, but he admits she's right. He and Suzu might be relocating again. He He adds, almost wistfully, that he was hoping this time they'd get to stay in one place for a while. When he curtly tells her that his personal life isn't any of her business, Satsuki suddenly grabs his tie and yanks him to face her. With an unsettling calmness, she tells him she already knows what happened to his family. Uncomfortable with how close she's standing, Naoto hesitates, then finally opens up. As the sun sets behind them, he explains how he and Suzu ended up living with Tamayo. Their parents' marriage had never been accepted by either side of the family, and after their deaths, no one was particularly eager to take them in. They'd been passed around from one reluctant relative to another, and Tamayo was simply the next in line. Satsuki interrupts gently, suggesting that Tamayo might actually care more than she lets on. After all, she did allow them to use her yard for gardening. Then, as if to change the subject, Satsuki takes out several seed packets and hands them to Naoto. Before leaving, she tells him that if they do end up getting kicked out, he and Suzu can always come live with her instead. Later that evening, Suzu wakes up and realizes Tamayo is probably still mad at Naoto, given that they haven't come home yet. Suzu grabs his hand and makes him promise that wherever he goes, he has to take her with him. Meanwhile, inside, Tamayo finishes her shower and struggles to find her glasses until she spots her cat running off with them. She chases the feline through the hall and accidentally bumps right into Naoto, who had just arrived to apologize. Flustered, Tamayo quickly retreats into the bathroom the moment she realizes who she's run into. From behind the door, Naoto gets on his knees and pleads for more time. He explains that tending to the garden is now his and Suzu's responsibility, and that it'll take time before they can enjoy any harvest. He only asks to stay long enough to see it through. Without warning, Tamayo opens the door, this time fully dressed, and tells him to hand over her glasses. Once she puts them on and sees him clearly, she bluntly asks if Satsuki is his girlfriend. Naoto immediately shakes his head. Satsuki, he says, is just a childhood friend. He adds firmly that he has no plans to get into a relationship. His only priority is taking care of Suzu. Just then, Suzu appears and asks if Naoto is finally done apologizing. Tamayo looks at her and says that if he's truly serious about caring for Suzu, then he should focus on the garden instead of fooling around with girls. Naoto's face lights up on her words, realizing that they imply he and Suzu are allowed to stay. Excited, Suzu invites Tamayo to help them in the garden, but Tamayo instantly refuses, saying she has no intention of doing any physical labor. That piques Naoto's curiosity. He recalls that their father once mentioned how he and Tamayo used to garden together. At the mention of her brother, Tamayo's mood darkens instantly. She snaps, ordering Naoto never to bring up her brother again. The next day, Satsuki joins Naoto and Suzu on their walk to school. Suzu cheerfully recounts everything that happened the day before, while Naoto quietly wonders why Satsuki keeps tagging along. Noticing his suspicious gaze, Satsuki teases him, lightening the atmosphere between the three of them. A few days later, the seeds they planted finally begin to sprout. Then his tone shifts. He brings up something more serious. He found Suzu's test results on her desk and is worried about her declining scores. Suzu suggests that he tutor her. With no real choice, Naoto agrees, though not without scolding her first and telling her to learn to be more independent. His words go in one ear and out the other as Suzu clings to him, insisting that since he'll be around to take care of her forever anyway, there's no need to worry. One day at school, Naoto realizes midterms are approaching. Yukari offers to study with him, but he declines at first, worried he'll only slow her down. Yukari smiles gently and asks him to at least think about it before walking off with a friend, leaving Naoto deep in thought. He tries not to read too much into it, but Shigenobu wastes no time teasing him about how close Yukari's been lately. Naoto brushes it off, saying she's just being polite, but the faint blush on his face betrays him. Once Shigenobu leaves, Naoto's expression darkens. He realizes Suzu probably wouldn't like the idea of him spending time alone with Yukari. Later that afternoon, heavy rain pours after school. Naoto, without an umbrella, watches his classmates leave one by one. Satsuki approaches and offers him an extra umbrella. When Naoto asks why she didn't walk with them that morning, she casually says she didn't want to interrupt his bonding time with Suzu and admits she actually followed them from 5 meters behind. She then teases him about sharing an umbrella, unaware that Yukari is hiding behind the lockers, listening. Unseen by either of them, Shigenobu also happens to witness the scene. When Naoto arrives home, he suddenly remembers that Suzu might have been stranded at school too. He rummages through her room for a raincoat, but instead finds a crumpled test paper hidden in her closet. To his surprise, it's a perfect score. Confused, Naoto wonders why Suzu would hide something like that. Before he can think further, Suzu walks into the room. Startled, he quickly stuffs the paper into his pocket. Suzu starts talking casually, mentioning that she walked her classmate Sato home because he forgot his umbrella. Naoto's tone subtly tightens as he responds. She instantly notices the change, but he brushes it off, claiming he needs to step out for a bit before abruptly leaving. Out in the rain again, Naoto berates himself. He realizes he should praise Suzu for her good grades, for her kindness, but he didn't. Until now, he's always thought of Suzu as helpless, someone who needed him for everything. His entire life has revolved around protecting her and keeping her happy. But now that she's starting to grow more independent, a strange uneasiness creeps in. Across the street, Naoto spots Satsuki, soaked from head to toe. It hits him that she must have lied about having a spare umbrella and had given her only one to him. Concerned, he grabs her wrist, but she brushes it off with a small smile, saying she must have misremembered. That only makes Naoto feel worse. Everyone around him seems to be pretending. He begins to realize that Suzu too might have been pretending, acting helpless so that he could feel needed. Satsuki notices his distant expression and gently reaches out to check on him. Naoto insists he's fine, but seeing how drenched she is, wordlessly takes off his jacket and drapes it over her shoulders. The gesture makes her blush faintly. He walks her home and is surprised to find her apartment so close to his own. But when she tries to open the door, the knob comes off completely. Naoto can't help but wonder what kind of parents would leave her in a place like this. Satsuki tells him to hurry inside and warm up, but when he hesitates, she grabs his hand and pulls him inside. Naoto resists, saying he needs to go home to Suzu, but Satsuki argues that Suzu is old enough to be left alone. Then, without warning, she accuses him of never prioritizing his own feelings, of living his entire life around Suzu's dependence. Naoto snaps, his voice rising as he scolds her for saying something so cruel. Satsuki only stares back, silent and unreadable. Her lack of reaction hurts more than he expects. He turns away, muttering that she doesn't understand the bond between him and Suzu, his voice trembling, almost as if trying to convince himself. Without another word, he leaves her standing there. Once he's gone, Satsuki slowly slides to the floor, cheeks flushed. In a quiet whisper, she tells herself that she does understand him. Outside, Naoto walks through the light rain, every step heavy with thought. His mind drifts back to Suzu. He finally begins to realize that his world has been built entirely around her, not just out of duty, but as a way to avoid everything else. Clubs, friendships, even his own growth. If he stopped centering his life around Suzu, maybe he could finally start thinking about Yukari. When he gets home, Suzu rushes to him, eyes filled with worry. She blames herself for his absence, but Naoto gently reassures her, offering sweets as a peace offering. He promises to come home earlier next time, and to bring more treats to make up for it. Suzu tears up, reminding him that he promised to tutor her, insisting she needs all of his time because she's not as smart as other kids. Naoto pulls out the test paper he found earlier. Her face freezes, then darkens. She snatches it, crumples it, and throws it away. He picks the paper back up and tells her she doesn't need his help if she can score that high. But Suzu insists it was a one-time fluke, that she still needs him for everything else. Before Naoto can answer, his vision suddenly blurs. The world spins and his legs give out. He collapses right in front of her. Suzu panics and rushes to call Tamayo. The next day, word spreads at school that Naoto is absent. At home, Suzu refuses to leave his side, clinging to him in bed despite his weak protests that she'll catch his cold. After much pleading, she reluctantly agrees to go to school. By midday, Naoto wakes again and immediately senses something's off. Sure enough, Satsuki is lying right next to him, watching him as if it's the most natural thing in the world. Startled, he tries to scold her, demanding to know how she even got in, but she ignores the question and apologizes for making him sick. She offers him medicine, but to his horror, it's a children's suppository. Naoto gapes, asking why she brought that instead of normal pills. Satsuki nonchalantly replies that it's the same kind his mother used to give him. The fact that she remembers such a weird detail makes his headache even worse. He tells her to go back to school, but she calmly notes that today only had morning classes, he's already slept past noon. She adds that she tried multiple ways to wake him up, teasing him about what those might have been. Before he can demand clarification, the doorbell rings. Naoto drags himself up and opens the door to find Yukari standing there worried. She asks if she can come in and cook something warm for him. Panicking, Naoto agrees, but his mind races. Satsuki is still in his room. As Yukari disappears into the kitchen, Satsuki announces she's leaving since she doesn't like seeing him with Yukari. Then, with a mischievous grin, she straddles him and teases that maybe he actually wants her to stay. Naoto freezes just as Yukari calls from outside his door, saying lunch is ready. In a panic, he shoves Satsuki under the blanket and dives in after her, doing his best to hide the suspicious lump. Yukari enters with a warm smile, setting a bowl of soup beside the bed, completely unaware. Naoto lies motionless, heart pounding, while Satsuki blushes beneath the covers, the room filled with unbearable tension. Naoto still can't believe he agreed to this. Hiding under the blanket had been Satsuki's idea, an idea that somehow made perfect sense to her at the time. According to her, if only Naoto's upper body was visible while she stayed completely hidden underneath, Yukari wouldn't suspect a thing. At least that was the plan. Things only get worse when Yukari notices a box of suppositories nearby. In a panic, Naoto blurts out that they're Satsuki's trying and failing to sound casual. Meanwhile, Satsuki squirms beneath the blanket, struggling to get comfortable. Her movements push Naoto into an even more compromising position, practically under her now. She seems quite pleased with the arrangement, even hugging him tightly. Naoto breaks into a cold sweat, praying Yukari doesn't notice how strange the situation really is. Yukari leans in to check on him, placing a hand on his forehead. Thankfully, she doesn't seem to notice that his rising temperature has nothing to do with his cold. She reminds him to eat and drink before heading out, finally granting him some much-needed relief. As soon as she leaves, Satsuki stretches and grins, clearly proud of her success. Naoto, meanwhile, is still trying to recover from the sheer stress of it all. Watching him squirm, Satsuki eventually takes pity on him and decides not to tease him any further. While walking home, Yukari can't shake a vague sense of unease. Satsuki had visited Naoto before her. She tells herself not to overthink it. Naoto did say they were just childhood friends, but it still bothers her. Pausing by a small shrine, she clasps her hands together and quietly prays for Naoto's recovery. Back in his room, Naoto changes into fresh clothes and opens the food Yukari made him earlier. Inside the container is a dark, lumpy rice porridge staring back at him. To anyone else, it might look unappetizing, but to Naoto, it looks wonderful because Yukari made it. Determined to be optimistic, he scoops a big spoonful into his mouth, only to instantly regret it. The taste is an odd mix of overcooked rice and something vaguely metallic. Still, he keeps eating. It's from Yukari after all. Spoonful after spoonful, he forces it down, determined to finish every last grain no matter how awful it tastes. Meanwhile, out in the garden, Satsuki tends to the plants while Suzu watches from nearby. Eventually, Satsuki calls her over to help. As they work, Suzu starts voicing her worries about Naoto. Distracted, she accidentally pulls out a basil plant, mistaking it for a weed since it was growing close to the tomatoes. Satsuki corrects her gently, explaining that basil and tomatoes are companion plants. They actually grow better together, protecting each other from pests. Suzu pauses, mulling over the thought a bit too long before suddenly announcing that she'll go check on Naoto. Just before leaving, she turns back and brings up something from years ago. She remembers how Satsuki once destroyed their garden as kids. Suzu had seen how upset Naoto was and even tried to chase Satsuki down for an explanation, but stopped when she saw her talking to a strange man before vanishing with him. When Suzu asks who the man was, Satsuki simply replies that there wasn't anyone with her. She quickly changes the topic, asking if Suzu ever mentioned that day to Naoto. After all, Naoto still believes Suzu doesn't remember Satsuki at all. Satsuki admits she ruined the garden out of anger. She and Naoto had fought the day before and she lashed out. It's something she's regretted ever since. That confession jogs Suzu's memory. She recalls cleaning up the garden with Naoto afterward and how she planned to tell him the truth, but didn't. Instead, she used that moment to grow closer to him, letting him depend on her, building something that belonged only to the two of them. The next morning, Suzu is surprised to find Naoto already awake and dressed. He says he's feeling much better and credits Yukari's porridge for curing him, though he admits he doesn't remember much after eating it. Then he notices Suzu's already prepared for school, even without his help. She tells him she's trying to be more independent, though she still wants to rely on him a little. At school, Naoto tries to thank Yukari properly, but she's always surrounded by people or busy with something. Some classmates notice and warn him not to get his hopes up. Yukari's out of everyone's league. She's polite but distant, and no one's ever gotten close. Shigenobu chimes in, saying he's known her since childhood. According to him, she's always had a way of attracting strange situations despite her calm personality. Naoto realizes that being pretty probably isn't as easy as it looks. On the way home, he sees Yukari turning down a group of guys. Assuming she already has a boyfriend, he quietly turns away. But Yukari notices him and walks over. Naoto finally gets the chance to thank her for visiting him. Just as he's about to leave, she suddenly invites him to a study session. He agrees on the spot, barely managing to contain his excitement. They find a quiet corner in the library and start working. In a rare moment of honesty, Naoto blurts out that he doesn't understand why she's so nice to someone like him. Yukari replies calmly, saying it's partly because he's a transfer student. Naoto feels a bit deflated until she adds that there's another reason. She tells him they've met before, long before he transferred. She explains that one day while staying late for club duties, she used an empty classroom to change out of her uniform. That's when Naoto suddenly burst in, demanding to know where his younger sister was. Completely ignoring her state of undress, he bombarded her with questions about Suzu, who had run off while he was handling transfer paperwork. When he realized she couldn't help, he left as abruptly as he came. Naoto is mortified. He doesn't remember it, but admits it sounds exactly like something he'd do when it comes to Suzu. Yukari, blushing, says she actually admires his dedication. She explains that Naoto feels different from the other boys she's met. Most only chase girls for shallow reasons. She even mentions the group of guys she rejected near the station, calling them that exact type. Sometimes, she says, men are too pushy, and he becomes frightening. That's why Naoto feels like a breath of fresh air. He's genuine and kind. Naoto feels a chill run down his spine as she trails off, then apologizes for rambling and excuses herself. On her way out, Yukari looks quietly pleased with how their talk turned out, until she spots Satsuki waiting near the library entrance. She wonders if Satsuki and Naoto had plans to meet, but Satsuki just smiles and says she's waiting for him because she wants to. Yukari nods and walks off without another word. Later that evening, Naoto eats ramen with Shigenobu and tells him about what Yukari said. Naoto thinks it was her subtle way of saying he shouldn't see her romantically. Shigenobu disagrees, insisting it might mean the opposite. Naoto doesn't catch on and instead vows to keep his thoughts pure so Yukari won't think badly of him. Suddenly, Satsuki appears out of nowhere, telling him he should just be himself. That night, Naoto reviews his notes from the study session. His classmates' comments echo in his mind, and though he tries to focus, he can't help imagining Yukari. He scolds himself, trying to push the thought away, but then Satsuki's face appears in his mind, which somehow feels even worse. He recalls the blanket incident and, against his better judgment, wonders what it would have been like if Yukari had been the one there instead. Immediately, he snaps out of it, horrified by his own thoughts. Muttering an apology to no one in particular, he freezes when he realizes Suzu, sleeping beside him, is now wide awake, glaring at him in quiet disappointment. Panicking, he stammers an excuse and flees to the bathroom. Meanwhile, at Yukari's house, she's taking a shower when her thoughts drift towards Satsuki. The way Satsuki seems so comfortable around Naoto keeps bothering her. She wonders if they're really just childhood friends or something more. Still, she decides to believe in Naoto. She tells herself she just needs to be braver, so that one day she can confess her feelings properly. The next morning, Naoto waters the plants in the yard, looking utterly drained. Suzu, tending to another patch of vegetables, complains to Satsuki that he's been acting weird since yesterday. Curious, Satsuki calls out to him, but Naoto, startled, accidentally sprays her with the hose. Drenched, she sits on the ground, blinking in shock as Naoto panics and backs into a corner, muttering to himself not to look. Suzu and Satsuki exchange a look, then agree to just leave and be. At school, Satsuki teases Naoto about his absent-mindedness, saying it's probably Yukari-related. He tells her to stay out of it, clearly flustered. Offended, she reminds him she's the one who got ignored all morning and soaked, thanks to his weird behavior. Naoto apologizes, then suddenly realizes something. She mentioned doing laundry at his place before class, which means some of her clothes might still be drying. Satsuki just grins, brushing it off, saying she'll manage since it's only exam day anyway. When Yukari arrives and greets Naoto, he instantly panics, insisting he wasn't talking to Satsuki, but she's already walking off toward her classroom. Yukari comments on his heavy eye bags as they walk, but before he can respond, a sudden gust of wind sweeps through the hall, lifting several skirts. Without thinking, Naoto lunges forward and hugs Satsuki tightly to keep her skirt from flying up. The hallway falls silent. To everyone watching, including Yukari, it looks like a bold public display of affection. Realizing what he's done, Naoto lets go immediately, stumbling to explain, but Yukari's expression has already darkened. Without a word, she turns and walks away. Naoto collapses in despair, blaming Satsuki for ruining everything again. Calmly, Satsuki mentions that she's actually wearing some of his clothes since hers were still drying. He didn't even need to help her. Then, with a faint smile, she thanks him for trying to protect her anyway. A week passes and Yukari barely speaks at him. Frustrated, Naoto vents to Shigenobu and Satsuki, only for Shigenobu to drop another bomb. There's a rumor going around that Naoto and Satsuki are dating. Naoto feels even more hopeless, especially since his long-awaited hangout with Yukari never happened. Seeing his slump, Shigenobu suddenly declares that what Naoto needs is a distraction. He announces a beach trip for the weekend, open invite. Even Yukari gets one. She initially agrees, but upon hearing that Naoto will be there, she hesitates. Still, Shigenobu promises to handle all the details. All they have to do is show up. After class, Naoto starts worrying about the upcoming beach trip. Things between him and Yukari are still awkward, and spending 2 days together might only make it worse. On top of that, he assumes Suzu will get lonely or worry about him while he's away. After thinking it through, he decides the easiest solution is to bring Suzu along. But when he gets home, Suzu tearfully informs him that she'll be going on a 2-day school beach trip. Naoto hides his relief and praises the news, saying it's great she won't miss out on school activities. He also mentions that he'll be away for a beach outing himself. They both pause, realizing neither of them will be home to water the garden. After thinking it over, they agree to ask Tamahyo for help. Suzu makes him promise not to forget about her while they're apart. He reassures her he won't, and in return, she makes him promise to take her swimsuit shopping the next day. The following day, Naoto regrets making that promise. Thankfully, Satsuki offers to come along since she also wants to buy one herself. Naoto hesitates but agrees, better that than shopping for girls' swimwear alone. Shigenobu, standing nearby, casually suggests she should join them. Yukari refuses, saying she overheard a rumor that Naoto and Satsuki are already dating. Shigenobu questions it, reminding her that unless she heard it directly from Naoto, it's just a rumor. When Yukari hesitantly admits she's thinking of backing out of the beach trip, Shigenobu recalls their middle school days and encourages her to at least talk to Naoto first. Encouraged by his words, Yukari decides to run after them. At the department store, Naoto is immediately overwhelmed by the number of swimsuit options. Satsuki and Suzu each pick out bold pieces and ask for his opinion. Trying not to let his thoughts run wild, Naoto keeps his answers short, insisting they just pick what they like. Satsuki playfully shows off her size, while Suzu subtly fishes for compliments. Flustered, Naoto tells Suzu to choose something with more coverage, then quickly turns away, saying he'll go find his own beachwear instead. Unbeknownst to them, Yukari watches quietly from a distance. A sales lady approaches and asks if she's looking for something, reminding her that she still needs a new swimsuit too. Yukari initially asks for something simple and modest, but after seeing Satsuki's choices, she quickly changes her mind and requests something just a little bolder. The attendant selects a two-piece that perfectly flatters her figure. Yukari, suddenly self-conscious, asks for another option. The sales lady smiles and agrees, casually asking if the boy she wants to impress has any particular preferences. Yukari's expression darkens as she pictures Satsuki. Hesitantly, she describes Satsuki's appearance. The sales lady's eyes light up and she eagerly takes Yukari's hands, declaring that she'll transform her into the boy's type. Soon enough, Yukari is fitted with long hair extensions and a bolder swimsuit that leaves her more embarrassed than ever. She fits awkwardly, unaware that Naoto has spotted her from across the store. He stares, clearly captivated, but fails to realize the girl he's looking at is Yukari herself. Naoto returns to the dressing area where Suzu and Satsuki are still trying on their swimsuits. Suzu calls out, asking him to help with something on her back. Naoto casually opens one of the curtains, only to realize too late that it's Satsuki's side and she's just stepped out of her swimsuit. Satsuki yanks the curtain shut with a chilling glare. Moments later, Suzu emerges, cheerfully announcing that she managed to get dressed on her own, oblivious to the tension in the air. Shortly after, Satsuki storms out of her booth, completely ignoring Naoto. Confused, Naoto tries to follow and apologize. When he gently grabs her hand, Satsuki turns on him, flustered and red-faced. Naoto is stunned. Satsuki had always been confident and teasing before. When he points this out, Satsuki snaps that it's different when it's unintentional. For a brief moment, things feel strangely intimate, and Naoto finds himself shaken by the sudden change. Meanwhile, Yukari finishes paying for her swimsuit and looks around for the others. She spots Naoto and Satsuki standing unusually close and quickly hides behind a corner. Satsuki notices her, but says nothing. Later on the train ride home, Satsuki asks why Naoto never badmouthed her to anyone. If he had, maybe she wouldn't have been invited and Yukari wouldn't have misunderstood. Naoto simply replies that their issues are between them. Half asleep, Suzu overhears and invites Satsuki to sit closer, but Satsuki declines, saying she's fine where she is. She's content just watching Naoto from afar, promising to step in only when he needs her. Naoto listens, unsure whether that's her way of making up for destroying the garden, or if she means something deeper. He reflects on their relationship. It's too tense to be called friendship, yet too familiar to be distant. They had once been close as kids, but things ended on bad terms. Even now, he hasn't completely forgiven her. When they finally reach their stop, they find Yukari waiting nearby. Without hesitation, she asks if he and Satsuki are dating. Naoto tries to clear up the misunderstanding, but Yukari insists he must be hiding something. She brings up the intimate moments she witnessed, including the kiss in the yard. Caught off guard, Naoto scrambles for an explanation. He realizes the situation has spiraled too far, and any hope of getting closer to Yukari feels impossible now. Seeing his panic, Satsuki steps forward to face Yukari. She claims the kiss meant nothing, calling it a cultural greeting. To prove her point, she leans in and plants a simple kiss on Yukari's cheek. Naoto nearly jumps in shock, while Yukari stares, speechless. Satsuki calmly explains that she's willing to kiss anyone, that it holds no special meaning, not even with Naoto. Eventually, Yukari, still flustered, accepts the explanation. Just then, Suzu wakes up, groggily complaining about being thirsty, prompting them to stop by a vending machine. Yukari tries to convince herself that the kiss was meaningless. After all, Satsuki's a girl. Still, she's too flustered to think straight and excuses herself. Before she leaves, Naoto stops her, reassuring her once more that he and Satsuki are just childhood friends. He adds that he's really looking forward to the beach trip with her. Yukari brightens with relief and smiles, admitting she's looking forward to it too. At the beach, Satsuki is left speechless by the sight of the ocean, while Naoto can't take his eyes off Yukari. In the changing room, Yukari's friends gush over her swimsuit. Though nervous, she wonders what Naoto will think of it. They notice Satsuki has already left the room. Remembering yesterday's events, and now certain Naoto and Satsuki aren't dating, Yukari dares to think she might finally have a chance to get closer to him. Meanwhile, Naoto finds it difficult to function without Suzu but decides to use this trip as an opportunity to get closer to Yukari. When his classmates invite him to hang out, he awkwardly agrees. It's his first time doing something that feels like a normal high school experience. He reminds himself that this trip is supposed to be fun, a chance to bridge the gap with Yukari. But every time he tries to approach her, she's surrounded by people. Frustrated but determined, he steels himself and decides he'll just have to push a little harder. His train of thought is cut short when he hears someone yelp in pain. Turning his head, he spots Satsuki gripping a guy's wrist in an iron hold. His classmates quickly explain that she's been getting hit on since they arrived. Worried things might escalate, Naoto strides over, grabs her by the collar of her parka, and drags her away before she can cause more trouble. Once they're alone, he tries to scold her for picking a fight instead of asking for help, but Satsuki completely ignores him and gestures to her swimsuit, asking what he thinks. When he refuses to answer, her mood soars. She folds her arms and demands to know why he isn't spending time with Yukari if that's what he came for. Trying to change the subject, Naoto asks what she plans to do since everyone else is already swimming. Satsuki hesitates before admitting she doesn't know how to swim. It's her first time at the beach, she's never gone with her family, and she always skips swim class. Naoto blinks in surprise. He realizes there's still so much about Satsuki he doesn't know. She admits softly that today at least she wants to try getting into the water. Naoto tells her she should, but insists she go with someone else just to be safe. Right then, Shigenobu appears, handing Naoto a note and explaining that he and Yukari have a few things to buy. He offers to introduce Satsuki to the other girls in their class. Before heading off, Naoto promises Satsuki he'll join her in the water later. She smiles warmly and Shigenobu silently observes her reaction with curiosity. When Naoto meets up with Yukari, he awkwardly avoids eye contact. Yukari, misrating his behavior, assumes her swimsuit doesn't suit her. To distract himself, Naoto pulls out the note, only to find it just says to have lunch together. While Naoto and Yukari are away, Satsuki spends time with Shigenobu. She admits she doesn't get along with girls and prefers watching from the sidelines. Curious, Shigenobu asks if she's in love with Naoto. Satsuki admits she is, but quickly adds that she has no desire to be his girlfriend. Satisfied, Shigenobu says he'll keep rooting for Naoto and Yukari. He also reveals that he's decided not to pursue Yukari anymore. Meanwhile, Naoto and Yukari stroll through rows of food stalls trying to decide what to eat. Naoto wonders aloud if Yukari might prefer something light and sweet like shaved ice. Yukari smiles at the thought, joking about how it'll dye her tongue, and playfully sticks it out, making Naoto's heart skip a beat. After thinking for a moment, she suggests getting something more filling first and points out stalls selling meat skewers. She adds that they could grab shaved ice afterward and share one together. Later, she returns holding several sticks of yakitori. The vendor gave her extra, and they sit on nearby steps to eat. Naoto feels incredibly lucky to be spending this moment with her. Their peaceful meal is occasionally interrupted by passing beachgoers. A few guys make comments about Yukari, even trying to talk her into ditching Naoto. Yukari tries to ignore them, but it clearly bothers her. Thankfully, Naoto picks up on it and suggests they head back to their classmates. He gently takes her by the hand. As they walk, Yukari nervously asks him to let go. He does, apologizing, then awkwardly compliments her swimsuit, quickly adding that he hopes he doesn't sound creepy. Yukari smiles and says it actually makes her happy to hear that from him. Suddenly, Yukari hears a familiar voice. She turns and spots Soichiro, a senior from school. He greets her briefly, compliments her, then walks off. Something about the encounter unsettles Yukari. She tells Naoto she wants to return to the hotel to rest. Back at the beach, Shigenobu starts to worry when Naoto hasn't returned. His concern deepens after overhearing some girls gossiping about a sighting of Soichiro nearby. Naoto gets information from the girls in his class that Yukari used to date Soichiro, but they had broken up when Soichiro graduated high school. The information slightly bothers Naoto, and Shigenobu suggests that he just ask Yukari instead of relying on what other people say. Naoto trudges back to the hotel only to find Soichiro looking around near the entrance. Soichiro spots him and asks about Yukari's whereabouts, so Naoto replies that Yukari has returned to her room and that Soichiro might need to ask for assistance from the staff. They introduce themselves to each other, and Soichiro even hands Naoto some snacks for sharing before entering the hotel in front of him. Naoto can't help but feel intimidated as Soichiro seems like the type of guy Yukari would still be into and genuinely seems very nice. He then hears Satsuki's voice behind him and quickly remembers that he had promised to go swimming with her earlier. He quickly apologizes. Satsuki accepts the apology and grabs Naoto's hand and plants it on her chest, teasing him that it's a gift to cheer him up. She then enters the hotel, leaving Naoto flustered outside. Meanwhile, Soichiro manages to find Yukari, and they begin walking around the hotel garden while talking. Soichiro tells her that he wants to have a fresh start and invites her to dinner so they can talk longer. When he leaves, Satsuki shows up and tells Yukari that Shigenobu wants her to know that the class will all be having dinner together and that Naoto has been stressing over her relationship with Soichiro. They hear Naoto and some boys talking nearby, apparently discussing Satsuki's availability. Some of the boys say she seems easy to get, but Naoto suddenly defends her. Satsuki blushes at his words but doesn't reveal that she and Yukari are overhearing. Yukari then tells Satsuki that she has other plans for dinner. When asked if it's with Soichiro, Yukari clarifies that Soichiro isn't her boyfriend and that she hasn't ever dated anyone. She then walks off, remembering the time she turned down Soichiro back in high school. Later, while waiting for the class, Satsuki informs the girls that Yukari won't be joining them. The girls get giddy at the idea that Yukari might get back with Soichiro, but Satsuki tells them Yukari denied ever dating him. Before the girls can argue further, Shigenobu enters the hotel and informs everyone that their classmates have already gone ahead to the restaurant. The girls quickly leave while Naoto, having overheard everything, grows more curious as Satsuki and Shigenobu talk. During dinner with Soichiro, Yukari thanks him for the time, but hurtful memories of their past begin to resurface in her mind. Despite turning him down back then, Soichiro had acted like they were dating, so much so that Yukari couldn't refuse spending time with him, especially since everyone around them already assumed they were a couple. One winter, just before Soichiro's graduation, Yukari had tried once more to turn him down. But Soichiro told her that he would still pursue her, even after finishing school, and that they could meet up again someday. Back in the present, Yukari brings up that winter day. She admits she didn't think he would follow through, especially since he never contacted her again after he left school. Soichiro explains that he was planning to wait for her to graduate before reaching out. Yukari then tells him that she's interested in someone else. Soichiro asks if the person she likes has eyes only for her. His question unsettles Yukari, and she abruptly gets up and leaves the restaurant. Back at the hotel, Naoto and Satsuki hadn't joined the rest of the class for dinner. They're both surprised when Soichiro walks into the hotel lobby without Yukari. Soichiro looks equally surprised to see them still there and says that Yukari had left dinner with him early. He hands them a note that Yukari had left with the restaurant staff. In it, Yukari had written that she would be walking back by herself. Satsuki reads the note and tells Naoto and Soichiro that Yukari probably doesn't like Soichiro that much and couldn't stand being with him. Just then, Shigenobu arrives, having come to check on Naoto and Satsuki since they hadn't shown up. Naoto decides to tell them about Yukari and Shigenobu offers to help find her. He tries calling Yukari, but Soichiro informs them that she won't pick up since he had already tried. To everyone's surprise, Yukari answers Shigenobu's call. He tells the group that she took a wrong turn but is on her way back to the hotel. Then, turning to Soichiro, Shigenobu politely but firmly tells him that Yukari is still uncomfortable around him and that it would be best if he left. Soichiro nods in understanding and leaves, saying he'll see Yukari in the morning. Once he's gone, Shigenobu admits to Naoto and Satsuki that he had lied and Yukari isn't coming back. He only managed to get her location. He then hands Naoto his phone and tells him to go find her. Naoto hesitates, admitting he doesn't know what to say. He turns to Satsuki, unsure, but Shigenobu insists that he go alone. He urges him to hurry, reminding him that it's not safe for a girl to be out alone at night. Naoto eventually rushes out to look for Yukari, while Shigenobu quietly wonders if he made the right choice by sending Naoto alone. Satsuki, a little frustrated, decides to go take a bath, still annoyed that Naoto had given her such a helpless look over his love problems with another girl. Meanwhile, Naoto tries calling Yukari using Shigenobu's phone. Yukari picks up, surprised to hear Naoto's worried voice on the other end. She tells him not to worry and says he can head back to the hotel. She just wants some time alone to think while looking out at the ocean. She doesn't realize that Naoto already knows where she is and is only a few meters away. Though he can already see her, Naoto gently asks over the phone if she'd be willing to open up more. As he explains that she doesn't have to hide how she feels anymore, Yukari finally looks up and sees Naoto standing right in front of her. As he walks closer, Naoto admits he doesn't like hearing her sound so sad. Yukari hesitates, then brings up Satsuki, saying there's still a part of her that doesn't fully believe nothing is going on between them. She nearly confesses her true feelings to him, but stops herself and turns to run away. However, she trips and falls, and when she looks at her shoes, she notices that her heel has broken. Naoto immediately rushes to her side, noticing that she's crying. Without hesitation, he offers her a piggyback ride, reassuring her that he won't drop her since he's used to carrying Suzu around anyway. Blushing, Yukari shyly says she's heavy, but Naoto insists that it's fine. With her on his back, they begin the quiet walk back to the hotel. Embarrassed but trying to keep things calm, Naoto asks if there's something wrong with Soichiro that made her avoid him. Yukari asks to be put down so she can explain. Once back on her feet, she confesses that she and Soichiro never really dated. Everyone just assumed they were together, and she had been too much of a coward to correct them. Taking a deep breath, she finally says she wants to change. She wants to speak up more when people do things she doesn't like. In a softer voice, she adds that she wants to find the courage and words to confess her feelings to the person she truly loves. Naoto, unaware that she's talking about him, smiles and tells her she should, and that he'll be there to support her no matter what. Yukari turns to face him. She says she admires him and admits that she overheard the conversation he had with the boys about Satsuki. She had admired how he defended her. She says she hopes to have the same courage he showed earlier, because she's always been someone who's afraid of what others think. Yukari tries to find the courage for one more attempt to confess, but just as the words are about to leave her mouth, they're interrupted by the sudden arrival of Soichiro, who had apparently gone up to look for her with some of their classmates. Shocked, Yukari quickly tries to hide herself behind Naoto, and he immediately notices how uncomfortable she looks. Sensing the tension, Naoto takes the chance to finally clear things up. He tells everyone that Yukari had never dated Soichiro. The crowd goes silent for a second before the murmurs start, with some classmates immediately accusing Naoto of being rude and stirring trouble. Soichiro wears a confident smirk as he brushes off the comment and confidently states that he and Yukari are a couple. He even turns to Yukari and invites her to tell everyone herself about their relationship, thinking she'll fall in line like always. For the first time, Yukari stands up straight and says that she was never Soichiro's girlfriend. She never agreed to go out with him and only stayed silent out of fear or confusion. She even adds that she never wants to see him again. Soichiro, caught off guard, sweats nervously and accuses her of losing her mind. He steps closer, trying to regain control, but Yukari continues to tell him off by saying he never listens. That's when he reaches out and grabs her wrist, his smile faltering. Before he can say or do anything more, Satsuki appears out of nowhere and kicks him hard in the back, calling him a jerk as he stumbles forward. He glares at her, but before he can insult her, Satsuki coldly asks for Shigenobu's phone. She declares that she's filing a report for stalking. This clearly rattles Soichiro. He threatens to call the police instead, saying they assaulted him. Still shaken, he finally backs off from now and tells Yukari that he's disappointed since he thought she would just go along with everything. Later at the hotel, Yukari's friends apologize to her for believing Soichiro all this time. Yukari reassures them, saying that it was partly her fault too for not correcting them when she should have. Shigenobu remains slightly worried, pointing out that Soichiro had only promised to leave her alone for today, but Yukari assures him that next time she'll be able to stand her ground. Shigenobu gives her a proud smile before turning to Naoto. Noticing how much closer the two seem since returning, he casually asks if something happened between them. Meanwhile, Satsuki returns Shigenobu's phone after noticing something on it. He pauses when he sees the screen and asks if she saw the caller ID. She nods but shrugs it off, saying it's none of her business. A bit later, while Satsuki's buying drinks at a vending machine, Yukari approaches her and thanks her for stepping in earlier. Satsuki says she only did it for Naoto's sake, since he looked like he didn't have a plan at all. Yukari chuckles and says that even if Naoto didn't have a plan, he helped her by simply listening. That support lifted a huge weight from her shoulders and inspired her to be honest with herself. She adds that she wants to do the same for him one day, accept him for who he is, flaws and all. Satsuki gives her an unimpressed look, so Yukari decides to be more direct. She admits that once the trip is over, she plans to confess to Naoto. Satsuki, still bored, simply tells her to confess if she wants. Before walking away, Yukari promises not to lose to Satsuki. Once alone, Satsuki takes a seat and sips her drink. Naoto soon walks up in front of her, holding out a bag of rice balls. As they eat, Satsuki casually mentions that his relationship with Yukari seems to be improving. Naoto agrees and also mentions that Satsuki is about to get popular with the guys in his class and even getting along well with Shigenobu. But Satsuki cuts him off, saying she's not interested in any other human, only him. She wants to understand why he's still so kind to her, even though he doesn't feel the same way, especially after what she did to the garden 6 years ago. Without warning, she kisses him. Then, quietly but firmly, she tells him not to be nice to her anymore because if he is, she might end up destroying something important to him again. Naoto is back at home from his beach trip, but his conversation with Satsuki still lingers fresh in his mind. He wonders what Satsuki was referring to. He recalls that the day before Satsuki had wrecked the garden, she had come over to hang out. They had been watching a romantic drama together when the main couple decided to run away. Feeling as if it was a good idea, Naoto had suggested that he and Satsuki do the same. They started making their way through their simple town and toward the next one. The walk had been long and Satsuki was visibly tired. She had pleaded for Naoto to slow down, and that was when Naoto finally took notice of her exhausted expression. However, Satsuki refused to admit she was fatigued and asked Naoto to take her even further away. The two continued their journey, promising each other that they would stay together no matter how far they went. Eventually, their little game of running away had to end when the sun went down. They returned to Naoto's house where his parents were already waiting. His parents offered to take Satsuki home since it was late, but Satsuki refused and turned to leave. When Naoto called out to bid her goodbye, she turned to look at him. But his memory is hazy, and he can't remember the expression on her face. While he struggles to remember, Suzu comes running up and tackles him, thrilled to finally be home with him again. They lie down together on the Ingala, basking in the calm breeze and the quiet comfort of each other's presence. Suzu gazes at their overgrown garden and casually remarks that they'll need to clean it up tomorrow. Naoto quietly wonders if Satsuki will come over to help like she used to. The next morning, Yukari practices confessing her feelings to Naoto in front of a mirror. She gets flustered by her own reflection, but quickly remembers the promise she made to Satsuki that she'll finally confess to Naoto. Even so, the nerves get to her, and she realizes she probably isn't ready to confess. Meanwhile, Satsuki steps out of her apartment and is caught off guard to find Naoto standing right in front of her. He asks why she didn't show up to tend the garden that morning. Satsuki fires back, asking if that's really the only reason he came. Naoto panics a little but insists that she should keep her promises, especially since she had been helping out every morning before school. Satsuki stares at him for a beat before calmly saying she expected him to yell at her for kissing him 2 days ago. She confronts him directly, asking if he didn't feel anything about those kisses. When he confirms that he did, she leans in, pressing further if he actually likes being kissed by her. She always thought Naoto harbored at least some resentment toward her. Naoto argues that he doesn't hate Satsuki. He admits he was upset about the garden, but what confused and hurt him even more was the fact that she disappeared right after and didn't speak to him again. Satsuki's expression stays unreadable, which only frustrates Naoto more. The entire ordeal had traumatized him as a kid, and her silence left a lasting mark. She asks if he was scared she'd disappear again because she hadn't shown up at the garden that morning. She tries to press further, trying to understand if Naoto still has feelings for her. But Naoto firmly denies it. He tells her that whatever feelings he had were left behind in the past. Hearing this, Satsuki's expression hardens. She turns away, saying she wants nothing more to do with him, and walks off in the opposite direction from the school. As she disappears from view, Naoto notices a strange aura behind him. He turns and sees Suzu standing there looking serious. She tells him that they need to talk after school. At school, Yukari is the first to greet Naoto and shyly asks if they can talk. She brings him to a quiet area of the school and finally thanks him for the help he gave her during the beach trip. She fidgets, gathering the courage to confess. But before she can say anything, a few of her admirers show up and try to get her attention. As Yukari awkwardly waves them off, some of her friends casually explain to Naoto that now that Yukari is confirmed to be single, she'll be swamped with confessions for a while. Naoto listens but can't help thinking back to the beach trip and how his original plan was to grow closer to Yukari. Technically, it worked, but now he isn't sure what kind of relationship he really wants with her. Meanwhile, Satsuki skips school and lies on a riverbank, resting with her eyes closed. Shigenobu finds her, asking if she's okay. Satsuki surprises him by opening up about her feelings for Naoto and how part of her still hopes she can get what she wants. Intrigued, Shigenobu asks what exactly it is that she wants. Satsuki gives him an answer meant for his ears only. Shigenobu stares at her in shock. Satsuki then adds that what she wants could never be understood by Naoto or even Shigenobu. But Shigenobu replies softly that he thinks he understands at least a part of it. Later, Naoto sees Satsuki and Shigenobu arriving at school together. He wonders if something's going on between them, even though Satsuki once said she wasn't interested in Shigenobu. Yukari tries to call out to Naoto, but he doesn't notice. He keeps walking, lost in his thoughts. She wonders if she'll ever get the timing right to tell him how she truly feels. At the end of the day, Yukari checks her reflection one more time, steals herself, and finally approaches Naoto, asking if he wants to walk home together. Moments later, the school announcement calls for her club, and she suddenly remembers they're scheduled to clean the pool. Naoto senses that Yukari isn't herself today. Later, he finds her changing inside the boys' locker room. Before he can call out to her, he notices a group of boys approaching and quickly enters the room, closing the door behind him. Yukari fumbles with her words, clearly flustered by her state of undress. Naoto informs her that she's in the wrong changing room. Once the realization sinks in, she freezes in embarrassment. Naoto tries to buy her some time by keeping the door shut as the boys outside try to force their way in. Eventually, they give up and decide to change near the pool instead. Yukari collapses to the ground, relieved but humiliated. Naoto crouches down to check on her, but quickly turns his back when he notices her appearance. Before he can leave, Yukari calls out to him and asks him to stay with his back turned. She says she has something important to tell him. While changing, she begins to talk about their first meeting and how it's ironically similar to today. Once she's done dressing, she approaches him, her confession ready on her lips. However, the door suddenly swings open and Naoto falls on top of her. He quickly apologizes, but Yukari manages to blurt out her confession before standing up and running away, leaving Naoto stunned and flustered. As Naoto walks toward the school gates, he finds Yukari waiting for him. He awkwardly says he'll see her tomorrow, unaware that she just confessed to him. Yukari grows confused when he doesn't acknowledge her feelings, and it's only then that Naoto realizes what she said earlier. Embarrassed, Yukari tells him he doesn't have to answer right away and turns to run, only to bump into a wall. She forces a small smile to reassure him before dashing off again. Naoto is left speechless, realizing his crush had actually confessed to him. When he returns home, Suzu is already waiting and asks if anything happened at school. Naoto says nothing did, but Suzu shifts the topic, asking if he and Satsuki are okay. Naoto grimaces, recalling that Satsuki had told him she wanted nothing to do with him. Suzu gently says she doesn't think Satsuki really hates him. She adds that she's grown fond of Satsuki too. She then hands him a bag of cherry tomatoes and suggests he visit Satsuki to make up with her. Later, at her apartment, Naoto wonders if Satsuki is already home. He tries the doorknob and is surprised when it opens easily. Inside, he finds the unit nearly empty. The space feels cold and uninviting. He starts to wonder how her parents could let her live like this, as it doesn't look like a place anyone would want to come home to. Suddenly, Naoto remembers the expression Satsuki wore the day before the incident. It was a smile, but one that looked painfully sad. The memory lingers and he wonders if things might have turned out differently had he said something sooner. As he continues looking around her nearly empty apartment, he notices a calendar hanging on the wall. Scribbled notes and markings tell him Satsuki has a part-time job. Curious, he traces the calendar to today's date and reads that she's supposed to be handing out flyers by the station. He heads straight there, and just as the calendar indicated, he spots Satsuki among the crowd, handing out flyers for a Chinese restaurant. She's wearing an outfit much cuter than her usual style, which is already attracting the attention of a group of men nearby. Naoto blushes at the sight, feeling both flustered and awkward, especially when Satsuki catches sight of him. With a cold glare, Satsuki marches away toward the mascot nearby, then straight back to Naoto. She brings him to a secluded area and reminds him of their argument that morning. Naoto tries to explain and apologize, but Satsuki remains firm and distant. Their attention is soon pulled away by the commotion of a small crowd. Satsuki's boss runs up to them in a panic, explaining that the person inside the mascot costume has fainted from the heat. Spotting Naoto, the boss immediately begs him to step in and fill the role, promising compensation. Next thing he knows, Naoto finds himself in the hot panda mascot suit, standing beside Satsuki. He peeks at her again, still slightly enchanted by her appearance, but his admiration is cut short when a group of kids knocks him over. The fall causes Satsuki to lose balance too, and she gets visibly irritated with him. Despite the mishaps, they continue their shift. Naoto surprisingly proves to be a hit, especially with younger girls who find the mascot adorable. He puts in effort to entertain the crowd, being kind to everyone except for the men making advances on Satsuki. When their shift finally ends, Satsuki's boss thanks Naoto for helping out. Though exhausted, Naoto realizes the day wasn't all that bad, and he's even earned enough money to buy Suzu a small gift. As he prepares to leave, he spots Satsuki, and Satsuki asks how he managed to find her. Naoto admits he visited her apartment and saw the calendar. Satsuki scolds him for trespassing, but quickly lets it slide. Naoto claims that she really needs to fix her door. Satsuki brushes it off, saying it doesn't matter since no one cares about her anyway. Frustrated, Naoto blurts out that he does care. He says she's important to him because she's his childhood friend. That fact alone is enough to make him worry about her. Satsuki stops in her tracks, his words catching her off guard. She turns and smiles, asking if it's really okay for her to be around him again now that he remembers their childhood friends. Naoto, a little confused by her sudden mood shift, agrees that she can. They reach her apartment, and Naoto mentions he already placed the cherry tomatoes Suzu gave her in the fridge. Just as he's about to leave, Satsuki casually asks if Yukari confessed. Naoto freezes for a moment, unsure of how to respond. Expecting him to shut her down and say it's none of her business, Satsuki is surprised when he admits he's not sure how to respond to Yukari's confession. He explains that while he's incredibly happy to have been confessed to by someone he likes, he also fears disappointing her. Satsuki tells him that it's okay to take his time. No one has the right to pressure or judge him for his feelings. The next morning, Naoto meets Yukari early. With his thoughts finally in order, he prepares to give her an answer. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss new episodes every week.